Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Graen, and welcome back to another Conversations on Retail, specifically focusing on shelf availability. I am really excited to talk about something that we have talked about on this channel multiple times, which is the role that robots play in retail. And I am really excited to have Sarjoun. Sarjoun, I'm going to have you introduce yourself to the audience, let them know a little bit about your background. And then we've got lots of questions for you. So go ahead and take it away and introduce yourself for us.
Mike, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very excited. You and I go a long way. We've had this conversation offline for so long. And then you told me, how about we have it online? So we're going to take the risk and dive in. I am the founder and CEO of Bossa Nova. I founded it in 2005 when I was still doing my PhD in robotics at Carnegie Mellon University. I guess our claim to fame is that we deployed robots in 600 Walmart Supercenters to help them manage their on-shelf inventory.
Wow. You got a PhD in robotics? There is such a thing?
CMU was the first program to offer it, actually.
Really? Really?
Yes.
Now I see all of these sixth graders out building robots and fighting in little cages and stuff.
Isn't
So
that
you
awesome?
kind of started a trend, right?
Oh, it's robots have always made kids dream, and big kids too.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little about yourself, and I'm going to put a little thing in there. You've got lots of friends and acquaintances, and you and I have been working together for lots of years. But tell us a little bit about yourself personally, professionally, and maybe if there's a little soundbite that most people don't know about you. If you're comfortable sharing, please do that.
I don't know about sound bites. So I'm born and raised in Lebanon. I came to the US at 22 for grad school at Carnegie Mellon, and could not wait to finish my studies to start a company. I've always wanted to be in a startup world. Bossa Nova was my first and only startup. It lasted for 18 years.
Wow.
And it was amazing. We did actually we had multiple half-lives, if I may say. And the first one was building robot toys. Lived in China for 3 years at the factory to learn how to make consumer products.
Mm.
And then we, quote unquote, graduated our toys from children to big boys and built those inventory scanning robots starting in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And very quickly started working with Walmart on the development, grew the company, Bossa Nova, to 230 people across which we had raised $120 million. So we actually lived the hockey stick.
Mm-hmm.
It was great while it lasted.
That's awesome. Well, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I need you to take off your really smart guy hat for a second, because you have that hat on right now. You can tell us all about how the robots work and whether, but walk me back and just talk about you, not as a solution provider to the industry, but talk to me as a customer. Okay. Because to me, one of the things that are really excited about this is the focus of this channel is really on shelf availability. And certainly robotics are one of the very strong, powerful tools that help that. But tell me as a customer, you've got experience over the last, I don't know, 6 months or so where you went in to get something and you really needed it and you got disappointed by the retailer. We don't need the retailer's name. We don't need throwing mud, but it happens all the time, right? Give us an example of, as a customer, you were disappointed by a retailer not having something on the shelf.
I have to admit that I wasn't as sensitive to that topic until I started working in it as a supplier. But once I did, I couldn't unsee it. Of course, in the pandemic, we've all had the horror stories of finding shelves empty or months on end. But there are a couple of chains in where we live, where we actually stopped going to it because we could never fill a cart. Every time we went with a shopping list, we were sure that we're going to come back with a couple of items missing, and we simply switched switched chains. We stopped going there. It was out of control. We felt they didn't have their inventory under control.
Mm, interesting. Interesting. Yeah, it's unfortunately a very common occurrence, and obviously during the global pandemic, all things were upside down. But even today, you'll go into a normal store saying, "I know I want this product," and you go to that product, and it's like they don't have it.
They don't
And
have it.
things, if it's a box of cereal, you can probably very quickly switch and go, "Oh, I don't want to get this other cereal, but I will."
Yeah,
But as I've talked about, I'm going in for the black printer cartridge for my printer, and they have all these printer cartridges, but I don't have the one for my printer. I can't switch. So we talk about actually firing the retailer, which is what you did. You fired the
we
retailer
did.
business with. You chose to spend your money somewhere else. And both Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, and the current CEO, Doug McMillon, says, at the end of the day, customers decide where they spend their money. They can hire us or fire us every day, based on what their satisfaction is. So that's a great
And,
example.
and we've been spoiled. We've, I think, become a little bit entitled. We want any product that we want, any way that we want, at any time that we want. So our tolerance for lack of operational excellence is now thin.
Yep, very true. Well, I thought we would start this thing with something that will help set the stage of what this is. And several years ago, when we had Bossa Nova rollouts in Walmart, Walmart actually created a video that described what this particular robot was doing in store. So we're going to play that real quick, and then we're going to come back and ask some questions about it. Okay?
When it comes to retail technology, we're pushing the boundaries of what is possible through robotics and AI. That's why we're excited about new shelf scanning technology we're testing in a small number of stores across the US. It simplifies routine work by using data and vision technology to find items that are out of stock, missed price changes, and missing labels. This helps our associates see where they can make the biggest difference for our customers. It also helps locate items and checks inventory levels on the shelf, broadening the assortment available to online grocery pickup customers and assisting our personal shoppers in filling orders. At Walmart, we're using technology to focus on tasks that are repeatable, predictable, and manual, freeing up associates to spend more time doing what they do best, serving you. When we combine the passion of our people with the power of technology, the possibilities are endless.
Fascinating, Sarjoun, fascinating. So you are the architect of the whole thing. That's exciting. Tell us a little bit about Bossa Nova. Where did it come up with the idea? You said you kind of came up with it a little bit in school. How did you get involved with, a retailer like Walmart? Just, any kind of backstory would be really interesting.
We were the proverbial hammer looking for a nail. We were technologists and we had a cool tech and we went looking for a solution, which is exactly the opposite of what startup founders should do. We lucked out. It worked this time. I have some videos I can show. I think that will make things
Absolutely
and fun. So let's do that. First, I'm going to show you the technology with which it's a bit chronological. I'll show you the technology with which we started. So what you just saw is this ball-bot invented by Ralph Hollis at Carnegie Mellon University, a robot that balances on a ball. Quite improbable, but it doesn't fall. You saw it in motion. It is balancing on a single point, the single point of contact with the ground. It remains upright. It is thin and tall, so it's well suited for human environments. And strong with the elegance of this motion, we actually went to different industries and tried to see what applications it could do. One of those is retail. And so here's a picture of me at the Intel booth at the NRF in January of 2013. And I owe a debt of gratitude to Intel because they hosted our new version of the Ballbot. And retailers were lining up the booth, out of the booth. They were all asking the same questions. Can it take pictures of my products on the shelf and then tell me when a product is out of stock? And our naive selves said, yes, of course, that should not be too difficult. Give us 9 to 12 months and we'll probably have a finished solution. And of course, it took 5 years instead.
Of course, always takes longer. Always takes longer.
Yes.
So it was just fascinating. So the fascinating thing is I still don't think that I've seen a robot anywhere. I mean, as I think about just robots for cleaning your floors, robots for scanning shelves, et cetera, I've never seen a robot dance on a single ball. That obviously got replaced by other capability, which is much more stable, I guess. Why
yes. So the elegance of the robot attracted the early attention, which got us started. So it was great, but it was too complex to manufacture and productize. In particular, if the power went away, this thing fell. And we tried to be ingenious with safety legs that popped out impromptu with springs instead of power and all of that. It became too complex. And we started to become wiser about the complexities of the rest of the application and of business development. At which point we said, let's just remove the complexity that's unnecessary and focus on this more stable platform with 4 wheels.
Gotcha. But what's interesting, what you said, is the retailers weren't thinking about how cool it was because it was dancing on a single ball. You probably thought that was the cool part. What they were going is, man, I got a lot of people right now that go down my shelves all the time and scan for empty shelves. Can you automate a robot to do that for me? That was the big takeaway. You were coming in with, isn't this tech cool? They were coming with, if I got a problem, can it do this for me?
That's
right. Is that kind of the way it plays?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we thought putting a camera on a robot was simple. And therefore naively thought we could do that in a short amount of time. It turns out that as you peel that onion, it's a very complex problem to solve.
So let's double click on that one a little bit. We'll get a little bit techie. Okay. So number one, if I think about a normal shelf, you'll see it's anywhere between probably 6 to, if you look at top shelf, kind of 8 feet tall. So they're fairly tall, right? And I'm assuming, what are you trying to do with this robot that made it so complicated? I'm assuming it's not just slapping a single camera on it and calling it good. You've got other stuff, lighting and things like that you've got to consider as well, right?
Yeah. And if a single camera could work, even a high resolution camera like a DSLR, we would have done that. We tried. This is how we started. Right. The issue is multiple. One, you need the resolution to read the barcode on the price tag. That resolution requires having a zoomed in camera. And therefore your field of view is narrow, so you need more than one camera. Also, you want to see the back of the shelf because shelves may look empty if a product is recessed, yet it's actually not empty. If you don't look at eye level for each shelf, you don't see the back of it, and you may miss recessed products. And therefore, we ended up configuring an optical stack, a column of cameras, all at the shelf level and zoomed in, so they could see the back of the shelf and read the barcode on the price tag.
So these things, as we go through that, we saw the video of an actual robot in a store. Literally, it looked like there was a bank of lights that turned on as well.
Yes.
And it wasn't going real slow, but it was not going real fast either.
Yes.
you're saying is it's able to literally stitch together the price label, the product, the depth of the shelf, and some of those kind of things for the retailer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll show you those pictures as well. The reason you have a light is to avoid motion blur. So by flooding the scene with light, you're able to shutter very quickly your cameras, and therefore, even though you're moving, the image turns out to be crisp. And here's an image of a single one of those 10 cameras what am I saying? 15 cameras that we have on the robot. You can see that you can zoom in and read the barcode on the price tag. But then you end up with 4,000 images per aisle. And that is multiple gigabytes that are difficult to manage. So we actually had to develop additional technology to compress those single images and then stitch them into aisle-long panoramas.
Got it.
And here's a picture of what that looks like.
Got it. So let me make sure I understand and make sure that if I understand for the audience, this thing is going down the aisle and it is literally scanning the shelf. It's scanning the products, it's scanning the label, and it's scanning what's behind the products if it can see it.
Yes.
And what you're able to do is a bunch of different things, which is if I have a label without a product, that would be an out of stock, right?
Correct. Yes.
If I have a label with a product, but it doesn't look like it's the right product, you've got work on the background, product recognition say, that says Tide on the label, but that's a gain product there. We called that a plug when I was at Walmart, or an incorrect product, some people said.
That's correct.
I'm assuming it can compare what's the shelf at the register versus what's the cost or the price at the shelf at the same time, correct? Those are some of the pretty cool things. And, if there's 155,000 items in a Walmart store, it does that every single day without calling in sick, without getting tired, without getting interrupted, et cetera. That's just the beauty of putting robots in stores. They do very autonomous tasks. They do it very well. They don't get tired. They do it accurately and all that kind of stuff, right?
That's exactly right. You design it well, and then it works every time.
So here's the big question. What's the status of it now?
It's gone. Unfortunately, we could not survive the pandemic, and we pulled the robots out.
Gotcha. So the pandemic killed a lot of stuff beyond just scaring everybody to death for 2 years.
It's a little counterintuitive, but we got outcompeted by the crowd, by people.
Interesting.
In the pandemic, there was a spike in online, in e-commerce, in online sales. Those orders were fulfilled from store shelves.
Right.
And our customers essentially hired an army of pickers, people whose job is to find your order on the shelf.
Yep.
Well, by doing so, they were also reporting the absence when they don't find the item out of stock,
okay,
by scanning the price tag, just as our robots were doing.
Huh.
And so there were additional signals that retailers could use, and that made the marginal contribution of the robots.
Yeah, not to debate anybody's decision. I guess here's a couple of pushbacks. Replacing robots with people is not counterintuitive. It usually goes the other way around, right?
Right. It's anachronistic, not counterintuitive. It's anachronistic.
I don't know what that means. I have to look that up later, but okay.
The rest of the industry replaces people with robots. In this case, the opposite happens.
Opposite happens. Well, here's the other thing. And again, not to be controversial, but I'm going to throw it out there. So what you're saying is rather than proactively monitoring my shelves for every on-shelf availability issue, which disappoints a customer or picker, either one, instead, I'm going to let a customer order the product and then and somebody try and pick the product as the method that tells me I am going to disappoint you. Going back to the example, right? it doesn't seem, if we're really customer focused, I would think you would want a proactive tool that says, here are the disappointment factors right now. Because here's the other thing is, I don't think customers order every product in the store, right? They maybe order, let's say the top 20 or 30%. I don't know what the numbers are, but what about those other 70% that are maybe not picked very often, but unfortunately, they're going to be on shelf availability problems and we won't know about it, right? So we won't get into diagnosing that, don't want to rehash it and debate it, et cetera. What you built was something that makes a lot of sense for the industry. It really, really does. And obviously, there are other people out there who have replicated your success with other retailers, and we're seeing some pretty great results. So it may not be the tool for every retailer, but it's certainly for some of the retailers who want to proactively make sure their product is on shelf. And we've talked about this before. I don't want to go into that, but some people use algorithms. Hey, I'm selling 12 a day and suddenly I sell 0. That's a pretty good signal that says I have an on-shelf availability problem. A lot of your stuff, spices, things that are in health and beauty aid, they may only send one or two a month. I can't tell if it's not on the shelf or it's just not selling. It's just not have the velocity. So tools like yours, I think, are ideally suited to be able to proactively do that. In addition, there was some stuff we were doing early on to be able to capture other signals other than just computer vision, right? Was that the vision for where you wanted to take this?
We were so we wanted to, there are so much more that you can do with a sensor platform that's autonomous. So right. Computer vision was one, 3D data was the second element. And it turns out that measuring the state of the store as built is very valuable. Measuring the depth of the shelf for shelf capacity allows you to adjust what you push, the quantity that you push from the distribution center, knowing that the depth of a shelf changes over time because the shelves themselves get swapped.
Gotcha.
Doing compliance checks on whether you're ADA compliant, for example, you can do that with 3D data. Figuring out what is your space management, meaning what fixtures to replace, what's the state of your fixtures, are they damaged and you need to replace them, and if so, what are the sizes that fit? So you would know, for instance, that buyers will build a planogram of where the product should go, which product goes where on a shelf, essentially a map of what the shelf looks like, assuming that it is a 4-foot shelf. Mm-hmm. And in some stores, you may have a column in front of the 4-foot shelf. So it doesn't always work. So knowing what are the actual dimensions in a store would allow you to be better targeted and refined in the execution of your planograms.
Yep.
Another sensor you can add is one that I know is dear to your heart, which is RFID. Once that you're mobile, you can start to inventory products, locate them as well, and you don't need to either manually wand them or have a heavy installation that installs ceiling RFID sensors, for example.
Yeah, we actually, you'll laugh at this. You probably don't even know I have this, but we were in Pittsburgh in your office, and we were in the very early stages of looking at a Bossa Nova robot in a store for CV. And I think I sent you a quick email saying, can it do RFID as well? Just as a joke, just to see what you would say. And literally, I'm going to show you the video. Here's the video right here. This is actually, it's just stripped down Bossa Nova robot. So it's just the actual robot. It's not all the pretty plastic. Yes. But you're seeing it actually read RFID tags. And that was a vision. And by the way, fast forward to now 2024, where Walmart's basically saying for 60% of its merchandise, which is all general merchandise, we wanted RFID tag. It was capability that was before its time. Now, today, people are wanting stuff and spending labor with people collecting that. There are other automated ways, such as this robot, to be able to do this, which was pretty cool. So you were just way ahead of your time, as usual.
Yeah. So. Look, fundamentally, I continue to be convinced that a mobile sensor platform is a very cost-effective way of capturing data.
Right. Right.
No way around it. It's just cost-effective.
Yeah.
And as AI is progressing, the ideas keep growing on what you can do with data. Now it's fashionable to talk about digital twins, for example. You can absolutely do that. It was one of the early products that we built, actually. We called it Space View. You could do virtual walkthroughs in a world of images.
Right. That's right. So let me ask you a question. This is a little bit separate, but you recently, it was pretty interesting on LinkedIn. You went pretty public with, for example, your original funding strategy. It felt like you're almost trying to help some of the new entrepreneurs out there with approaches, et cetera. But you specifically landed on something called RaaS versus SaaS, so robot as a service or software as a service, et cetera. You had some pretty strong feelings on that. I think the audience would be interested in your thoughts in that area.
Yeah, firsthand. These are firsthand pain points that we experienced. We started by offering our robots as a service. We thought the OpEx way to the market is the lowest friction way, and therefore that's what we should do. And it was successful at first. It's helpful to overcome initial skepticism if you don't have a track record, which was our case. And people don't want to take too deep of a plunge at first and get financial exposure, so they may essentially rent it. We did that. It worked. And then as we started to scale, the more robots we had to deploy, the more capital we needed. And where does the capital come from? There are a few ways where you can do that. One way is if you have a very strong contract, you can take it to a bank and they get an advance against that. Or you have to raise it from investors. And we raised a lot of it. That's why we had to raise so much money from investors. But that's not a good use of capital. And it's expensive. The cost of capital is high for a startup.
Right.
And so we actually changed models. We figured out what would be a more attractive model. No surprise, our customers being large. And what I'm saying is not necessarily universal. Mid-market customers may not have the wherewithal to actually make big capital acquisitions, but our customers were multinationals. They definitely had the capital. Their balance sheet was extremely strong. And they were actually willing and used to buying capital. That's how they acquire checkout counters. So it is a model they understand well. And they were pretty open about buying our robots, because the other benefit of it is that if Bossa Nova disappears for any reason, they get to keep it. So business continuity was important.
Yep.
So that was the case, but for a startup, getting recurring revenue is very attractive from a valuation perspective. If you look at the stock market, software companies get 10x valuation, get a valuation that's 10x their revenue. And that is a benchmark against which you could value your company when you're raising money from venture capital. So getting recurring revenue is important. And we figured a way to tie it to the software. And we had two sources of software revenue. One was the software running on our robots. So even though the customer was buying the robots, we continued to get recurring revenue from it because we had the software that we continued to develop. So to support the development, we needed that recurring revenue. And the other was the AI in the cloud that we were offering as a service. The robots were capturing data that was being analyzed on our servers. And therefore, that was a second recurring revenue. And that was another SaaS. So we shifted the business model from RaaS to SaaS. And the financials look beautiful. It's a sea change. And they look familiar to venture capitalists. This is a SaaS business model. We pushed it to the point where the robots no longer touched our financials. They didn't appear on our balance sheet. The customer could buy them from the contract manufacturer. And therefore, that negotiation happened on the customer's credit rating, not ours. So they got better terms as well.
Got it. Got it. But talk to us a capital versus an OpEx. I would think most retailers are in the business of selling stuff, not maintaining robots, not doing software updates on robots, not putting guidance systems and all that kind of stuff. So isn't it more attractive to most retailers to say, I just want to buy this as a service?
Yes, I'm sure yes, this is the case in particular for mid-market companies who have less of an experience doing that. So in that case, it probably makes sense to do RaaS. But you could offer support either yourself or through a third party that you train.
Okay.
And that industry, the retail industry, is set up like that. For instance, the checkout counters do get serviced by third party service providers. So, and those service providers are getting more sophisticated and are servicing robots. So that's another option. And the developer of robots, you're still on the hook for availability. So you need to man the call center, the operations room, make sure when there is a problem that you are the first line of defense, you are triaging problems, you are dispatching, servicing, field servicing, for instance, you are escalating to engineering for debugging. You're not off the hook. It's not a fire and forget type of sale. But the point was not to tie your capital with hardware. A startup needs every dollar to pay people. And that's a better way. If you can pull it off, it's a much better way of doing it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So as with anything, let me just kind of two parallel paths. You started in this space, you said in 2005, roughly?
Yeah. Yes.
So here's what's interesting. I'll just throw this out here. In 2005, you started exploring RFID at retail. I'm sorry.
Sorry. 2013 was the retail start.
Yeah, but okay, cool. So 2013. In 2005, I got involved with RFID at retail. And we started and then stopped and then started and then stopped and started and stopped about 5 or 6 times with some of the retailers out there for different reasons. You know, there were some reasons says the costs were too high, the technology didn't work right, it wasn't ready yet, et cetera. Some was exactly what you said. It was really cool technology looking for a business problem instead of here's the business problem, here, what's the technology? But now clearly RFID is mainstream. I think this year we did over 35 million tags, and I think the glide path is going to continue to explode. It has become the new technology platform, if you will, especially for items such as apparel and general merchandise and things like that. Here's the question. Why don't we, since you started in 2013, why don't we have robots in every one of the stores in the US? What have been some of the major challenges? Because number one, they don't get tired. Number two, they can do multiple things. They can do multiple functions in a store, not just one. So you are sort of sweating the asset. It seems like the hourly rate is certainly very reasonable compared to a human doing it. We're not displacing people because we have all these other tasks that we need people to do that we don't want to have them take time doing with robots. Why don't we have robots everywhere?
I was in the business of answering this question. It's such a difficult answer. Your experience with RFID showed a 15-year sales cycle.
Yeah, true.
Do you know any startup that can sustain such a sales cycle?
Not at all. Not at all.
It's a kiss of death.
Yeah.
Can't do it. Time is money. You can't do it.
Yep.
So it's the incumbents, the big service providers who can sustain it from other revenue and maybe innovate on the side.
Yeah.
There may be a more fundamental characteristic of the retail industry. It's just my personal opinion, the one that's maybe jaded from my experience, but I see a handful of innovators in the industry.
Yep.
And by and large, and everybody else are slow followers, not even fast followers, slow followers.
Yep.
But by and large, my view is that retailers are operators, some of it operators and merchants, right? Supply chain operators and product merchants.
Yep.
You're not technologists.
Right.
And you keep highlighting on your show, and research continues to prove how big of a pain point out of stock is.
Yep.
And after 10 years of trying to do it firsthand, I am not so sure they are that interested in solving it.
Could be. Could be. What's it?
The pain point is real. It's quantified. They know it.
Yep.
They have a way of managing it that mostly works right now. And if it's working, if it's not broken, don't fix it type of thing. You can make it better. Yes. You can make more money. Yes. Oh, there's another problem. Sorry. Is proving that you can sell more with the technology is very hard.
Interesting.
Very hard. It's very easy if you replace labor. That's a very easy calculation for any CFO.
Yep.
The upside, the top line impact is very hard to calculate, even though it's real.
Interesting.
Because let's say you introduce a technology that should increase on-shelf availability and therefore sales. You try it out. You see an increase in sales.
Right.
How do you isolate that increase to that one variable that is the robot? It could be a seasonality difference. It could be a fluctuation in the weather. It could be so many different parameters. That calculation I have viewed to be similar to the way drug discovery is proven. It's just very, very hard. It's an exercise in statistics that actually takes scale. You can't do it in a small sample.
Yep.
It takes scale and it takes art. And proving that is a big barrier to adoption.
Yep. Great point. I think you're right. I think, and I'm not trying to class it because there's no such thing as a retailer. They're all different. Every store is different. Every product's different, et cetera. But in general, they're operators, right? We put stuff on the shelf and we take the customer's money. That's what we do, right? And I think to your point, industry has struggled. Let's take the RFID. RFID for years has been, it's just a technology thing. Well, we're improving your on-hand accuracy from 60% up to 95%. Yeah, but so what? That doesn't help. Well, now we're starting to tie when you improve your on-hand accuracy. I heard from a retailer the other day, every 10% of improvement in inventory accuracy gives you 1% of sales. So if I'm at 50% on-hand accuracy and I go to 100 or close to 100, that's a 5-point improvement in sales. Retailers are starting to tie those together. For every time I don't have product on the shelf, this is how I disappoint the customer, right? We're getting there, Sarjoun. And the way you test that is not in a bunch of stores. You do a scientific test versus control. We're going to do this in 30 stores. We're going to not do it in 30 stores. And we're going to measure pre versus post longitudinal study of here's the improvement in on-shelf availability. And here's the improvement in sales. Here's the deal. Your technology is not the solution, right? Just like RFID is not the solution. It's a work process that says we are going to do everything we can to make sure stuff's on the shelf for the customer to buy. We think they will buy more. We think they will be loyal and come back. Just like the retailer you fired, you get this bad enough, people just say, forget it. I'm not coming back. I got no time to sit around and go to a store where they have half the stuff not there. I think your intervention was just too early. People are starting to get that. That's why RFID is exploding. Not because, oh, well, now it's cool. Before it wasn't cool. No, now people are seeing what the results of that were. So I believe you were just too early in the process because let me just call them out. Brain, Symbi, and Badger are all selling robots and being very, very successful in engaging retailers and suppliers with this stuff. to let them know about in-store conditions that have never been available before. And I think
Nothing would make me happier than their success. And I'm friends with all of them.
Yeah.
It would be wonderful for the industry, for robotics, for technology, for the customers as well.
Right.
I think you're right. There's no single panacea. I heard the phrase, it's a multi-signal approach.
Correct.
You should throw the kitchen sink at the problem. The sales velocity, images that you can get from professional shoppers that are fulfilling your online order, robots if you can, cameras if you install, all of that helps move the needle.
Yeah, but for example, let's just take a robot for a second. If I run a robot by a pile of clothes, your computer vision will never be good enough to go 33 versus 32. It's just never going to happen, right? Try and take and put an RFID tag on a watermelon. Good luck. Good luck reading it technically. Or try and put it on Pop-Tarts where you're adding up to 4 and 5 cents for Pop-Tarts when I don't think I need to know that level of accuracy. There's not a value proposition. That stuff turns so fast. I should. By the way, there's other categories, let's say milk and bread and yogurt, etc., that even a robot scanning a couple times a day is not frequently enough because I got to be in stock all the time. I can't be out of stock for a nanosecond. Well, fixed cameras make a lot of sense for that. So the retailer that figures out this multi-sensor platform and figure out which each one of these roles play, but they got to start with a premise that says we're disappointing our customers. They're going to start firing us or spending their money other places if we don't have product on the shelf. And it's going to be a multi-signal approach. It is not going to be a single signal. It can't be. That's hard, right? Because it's like a great big science experiment. So, well, where do you think the future is? I mean, obviously, you're saying you are currently involved, or at least friends with all the folks who are doing this. Nothing would make you excited. What do you see as the vision for this? Where's this thing going to go?
Yeah, I honestly hope an early adopter scales it the way Walmart did with us.
Yep.
And that will signal the change to the industry. I do believe others will follow if that does happen, but somebody has to take the plunge.
So what are the technical, so that's the business part. We got to have retailers adopt this and take it, and et cetera. What are the technical challenges? So we didn't get into the specifics of how the robot works on that, just to be an experiment, but this thing is extremely safe. It doesn't run into customers. It avoids obstacles. It does all it. Is there anything technically that still is on your kind of innovation pipeline other than RFID and other additional sensors? Is there anything else that we need to do that would make it more reasonable for a retail environment?
I think the technology is mature from a robotics perspective today. We had to build it all ourselves because we couldn't buy it. Today you could.
Correct.
Actually, there are platforms, their software is mature, there are service providers that will do the fleet management, that will help you. You can avoid building. You could buy it. You could buy your way to the market doing it and focus on the business or on the data, on the sensing aspect. You could focus on perception, and that's great. I think the technology has a long and promising potential a long future in front of it, and promising one, which is so far we've limited ourselves to providing insights. The humans are doing the manipulation. As robotics develops, manipulation, I think, will be the next frontier, and helping the humans by doing the restocking tasks in increasing levels of complexity would I think be absolutely fantastic.
Let me make sure I understand. Are you saying robots potentially could stock product in the future?
Yeah, stock and pick. They're already picking in the supply chain.
You're right. Interesting.
And they pick from the shelf. Do they need to?
So here's the big goose egg question: are you really trying to put people out of jobs, Sarjoun? Is that what your goal is, to make robots become replacements for humans? Because somebody's thinking that already. We might as well throw it out there.
Even though humans put me out of job, I'm not looking for revenge.
That's a great.
I don't see a scenario with robotics in particular, where they're going to take jobs. There are such a lack of manpower that, and the technology is so nascent, in particular when it comes with manipulating the environment, that we are going to be, us roboticists, building tools that empower and augment humans for a very, very long time before we get to replacing them.
Got it.
There's, and especially in retail where we have such a big revolving door of people that come and work and then leave and then come back, you're just not taking jobs away. It's not true.
Yep. You're freeing up monotonous tasks, letting robots do that. You still need people. Guess what? I don't know that a robot will ever replace a human when it comes to working with a customer to solve a problem in a store. Can you show me where the Dawn soap is? Yeah, you might be able to guide me there, but I'm not sure really answering and having a discussion about that is something. But picking and stocking and scanning for outs and all that kind of stuff. Here's the other environment, and this is the game changer I haven't figured out how to break yet, but there's an opportunity out there, which is the retailer is not only the one who has a vested interest to make sure the stuff's on the shelf. The CPG suppliers, Procter & Gamble, Kimberly-Clark, have a very strong interest to do that. And they get that data and insights from a third-party provider like an Acosta or Anderson, who goes in and does surveys and takes pictures. Well, why do we have them doing that? Let's tell them ahead of time, you're going into the store, we scanned it an hour ago, and these are the 5 things you got to go fix. Let's use AI and technology to enable them to get more work done rather than data collecting. It just doesn't.
There are also things humans cannot do. For example, looking at a shelf and figuring out which products are misplaced is completely hard. Whereas with a picture, you could completely map out what should go where and have a guide, provide guidance as to how to fix things.
100%. Well, Sarjoun, I want to kind of wrap up this conversation with a question. This one to me is one I always ask people, and it's interesting where people take it. I've asked you a lot of questions. What is on your mind that I didn't ask? What questions should I have asked that I didn't ask? Because I'd be very interested to know, man, what's going on the top of that brain that I never kind of unpack? What's your thoughts in terms of what I should have asked?
What I'm currently thinking about in various domains is integration. What we've talked about are point solutions.
Okay.
But in reality, for a product to go from the factory to your home is a long supply chain.
Very much.
And there are point automation that are happening along the way, but they are typically done from independent companies and with little talking in between. And therefore, it's a high friction environment to automate more and more. But if there is a way to integrate throughout the supply chain, make solutions work well together, and you optimize the integrated whole, wrapped with very good software that does it all, I think that would be a great service to the entire industry. And I haven't seen it yet, but I hope it comes to bear.
Well, let me throw one more complicating factor, which is actually an enabler to that. Have you ever heard of a serialized G10 before?
Yes.
Okay. So we usually think about UPC, and I got 10.
Yeah.
In the serialized world, I've got UPC 1, serial number 1, UPC 1, serial number 2. I've got unique serial numbers for every selling unit. So if I've got 10 of these cups, each one of them have the same UPC, but I have a unique serial number with them. I have the ability, and the future is going to be for me getting item serialization throughout the industry. So I literally can say, I just received a bunch of shirts from Nike, and it says Nike on them, but they're not Nike product because here's all the unique serial numbers that are valid. So these are counterfeit or claims. And I think you're right. The data throughout the supply chain, from the time a tree is cut down until a mother is diapering their child in their home, that supply chain flow can only be automated if we share data back throughout the supply chain. But that is the hardest part, because the
It is.
retailer their systems and the distribution people have their systems and the suppliers have their systems and raw material have their systems. There are systems in place that allow us to share that information, but we really aren't doing it yet. And that's a big opportunity. So
we scratched that surface a little bit when we were doing robotics. Our robots, our shelf scanning robots, were getting in the same aisle as the floor scrubbing robots.
Yep.
And really, with good integration, that should not happen.
Yep.
That's just one example.
Great point. Great point. Sarjoun, I can't tell you thank you enough. You've been a friend.
Thank you, Mike.
A person who I've worked with. Frankly, every time I talk to you, my head hurts because you're so smart at this kind of stuff. You know how to do this stuff. I really hope, and we'll put your LinkedIn profile into this bio so people can reach out to you if they have any questions. But I hope you stay in this industry. Don't give up on us, because I think if I know anything, knowing what we've done at RFID for literally 20 years and now we're starting to get the traction we need.
Yes.
I think you were just too early. I think you were an early person out there and everybody had a skeptical reason why not, et cetera. I think there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel where I don't know that we'll have robots in every store, but the innovative retailers that want to be around
sure.
Not 5 years from now, but 50 years from now are going to have to invest in this to figure out how to mechanize work that's monotonous and tedious and you can't get people to do or do very well, but B, just make sure that they've got stuff available on the shelf for customers. That to me is the big part. So very, very much for your time. And
Mike, you've been an incredible support through the years. You've been selfless as well. I have to say it to everyone. You're genuine, and I count you as one of my friends. Thank you.
Very good. Take care.